So anyway, Dennis, let's talk about this is secret stuff here. Let's see. Yes, let's talk about this a little bit. And I hadn't finished this yet. So what I have done is set up my touch database, and I've looked at from 2013 to 2024 player averages for the first 3 weeks, and then the same players average 14 to 16 weeks. In other words, early success, is it predictive or not, or failure, does it change? And so from 2013 to 24. So I've actually done that, and I've got a lot of things to tell you about, but I think I'll start with this first. This first. So what we have here is the number of touches weeks. This is the touch average weeks 1 to 3, 0 to 1, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 4 to 6, 6 to 9, 9 to 12. And I just hadn't finished yet, Dennis, because I just thought of this yesterday. This is the total number in the database. This is the number at week 14 to 16 were 10 or above, 10 to 20. And this is the number 20 touches average or higher. And this is the percentages of that. And so what you see is getting above 10, it looks like it really changes after 9. So there's a key, and I don't know from like 13 to 16 or whatever. I don't have all the data yet. I
Hmm.
could maybe next week if I remember. I'll probably be on to something else to figure it out. But 34% of those that were in the first 3 weeks got an average of 9 to 12 touches. And the average is about 15 on the top 20%. So that's kind of that level. If we were doing calm, it would be about 15 touches for a
Yeah,
running back.
that makes sense.
Yeah. So a third of them uh, stayed or maybe improved a little bit, but that's 9 to 12. And 20% from 6 to 9. Anything above 20, in other words, we're talking superstars, Dennis, there's 6%, 7%. So just on average, and again, I haven't done any predictions as to who these giants are that stepped way up, but it's not like there's a whole bunch. So
No.
if you're fishing in that pool, you're getting 6 out of 100 that are something, 7 out of 100. And notice it doesn't change from 6 to 12, it's about 6.5%. So, in other words, that's interesting. In other words, there's not, in other words, if you see it's 2, 1, 3, then it went up to 6, so you doubled, but then the next level, it didn't double. It just got about the same. So there's kind of
Hmm.
a plateau here of super success. So if you're fishing deep, and this is some of the idea about our better than zero and catching these maybe these second RBs or maybe even a third down RB that gets some touches a week. They don't, by the end of the season, there's not this great movement up at all. In other words, I understand you try to acquire these, but it's rare. So there's what I think the work is to figure out if there anything like the MVP from last year. Is there anything going on that we can spot in that group? Because just random, just average, It's rare. So I guess again, here's the question. What is it about the 6 or 7 that really go into 20 touches? I mean, that's amazing. From 6 to 12 touches, now you're at the end of the season, you're up to 20 touches. I mean, that's got to be probably injury, I'm assuming, and probably can't be predicted. But I just want to see what the data is. Nobody's telling me this, and it's the old "why am I having to do this" stuff kind of thing. And I don't think anybody's ever said anything like this, Dennis, or tried to do anything. I haven't seen this work. So I'm going to stop here, but I need to continue on and this is just running backs, by the way. This is not wide receivers or tight ends. So there's more work to be done. If I remember, I can fish in those pools, but I just wanted to do running backs. I'll stop and let you comment on that.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see if there is a way to break this group out. So, in other words, there's 6 and 7%
Yes,
that are really the super duper guys that
they're
you want.
stepping up, and I can give you
Yeah.
the names. You know,
So, so here's the question: is what is their level of experience? Is
see, I
this
don't
a
have rookie
yeah,
or
yeah?
one
Is
year. I
this
mean, I could get that data. It's in another database, so I'd have to.
right?
Uh,
Right. And what we could do is by looking at that group every year, we could probably decipher why. Like I would look to see now that we see that there's a pattern, there's a big jump, and there's a pool of players
yeah.
that are making that big jump. And
Well, it looks
yes,
like if you had to cut it, you would say got to have at least 6 in the first 3 weeks average, because before, pre 6, you're not. I mean, we're doubling with that. You double your
yeah,
chances of finding
yeah.
this rarity.
Yeah, so what this is telling me right away is these guys are not coming out of the clear blue sky. So there's actually usage prior to the breakout usage.
Mhm.
Now the interesting thing will be to look at the 6 and 7 or the 20 and 34 because you know people will say, oh, that's 6%. That means 94% aren't doing anything. Yeah, fine. But is there a pattern to this 6 and 7%? Because the goal in fantasy football is always to discover those outliers, but you have
No,
to
no, no.
do
Now,
it.
Dennis, your statement, the goal in fantasy, whose goal
Well,
other than you and me?
well, yeah, yeah.
Am
And
I
I'm
missing
just
something? Is
no,
there a
no,
whole
no,
bunch of
no. There
these
isn't.
people that
There,
that have
there,
this goal?
there aren't
No, I hadn't
because
seen it.
but what I'm saying is to win in fantasy football,
Uh,
to win more consistently in fantasy football,
Yeah,
you need to find more bargains than
yeah.
your
I
opponents.
understand, but I
And
still back, Dennis. Who's doing that?
nobody.
I'm
And
not
that's
sure. You said the goal to win
the goal to win. And that's what we have
is if
discovered.
I am a noisemaker, is that
Yes.
what I'm doing?
No, you
Am,
are not.
but
You're
but what I'm saying is my goal for my leaders to win, or is my goal to keep clicking and talking me
yeah,
up and click some
yeah.
more, and so you come back next year? In other words, is my goal you keep coming back to me to learn how to fish, but I don't ever tell you how to fish, but I kind of do, but I kind of don't, because if you can do it yourself, you don't need me. You
Well,
don't need
for
my tip sheet anymore,
yeah.
Dennis.
But first of all,
Don't get me
the
going.
I don't think the majority of people playing fantasy football
I know they don't.
understand
They
how
don't
to
care.
find the edge.
Yeah.
And even a lot of the
But you would think after a few years, even wouldn't they like, I keep getting my butt kicked.
no,
I got to
no.
do something different.
Look at the reaction
But
every year. Like you see a Puka Nakua come out,
yeah.
and you see a Kyron Williams, or you see a Chase Brown or a Bucky Irving, and people's response, the majority response is, "Oh, you're never going to predict those guys." Or the alternative of people that use data in an incorrect way is they build a quote unquote model, which is meant to catch these things. But what they do is they look at things that don't matter. Like,
But they haven't tested those. I mean, I don't know. If
no,
somebody said, "Here's my
no,
model," I
no,
have
it's
a lot of question because we have no peer review. There
no,
is no society, no journal. There's nobody tracking anybody. I mean, I know fantasy receipts, but no offense, fantasy receipts, you kind of piss poor on what you're doing. You're selective, and and it's almost like you're entertaining us versus, hey, I'm
yeah.
really trying to do what you claim to do.
And they
And
try
that's
to pick,
fine.
they
I
pick
think
on,
that's yeah, I think they have their own people that they pick on, and that's fine. I mean, but I don't
yeah,
think we're really going to change the world, and so let's do fantasy receipts and let's really make a difference. No, they don't. Cause
no, no,
cause they're in
no.
business, and every year they're coming back and getting the same old stuff. It may be different players, but all these, you know, 100% this is going to happen. This is the bust of the century, or this is the sleeper of the last 10 years. And you have all
Yeah,
these crazy statements, and you're basically just wearing a lucky ham swimming with jaws. I mean, you stick that thing around your neck, and you're surprised when the shark tries to eat you, and they do it every year. You just, well, I want the lucky pork chop next year. It's the same stuff, Dennis. Don't get me going on the lucky.
yeah, and you're correct. And it's fantasy receipts picks on the
And that's fine. They
people that are
deserve to
the
be picked
most
on.
the people that are most annoying.
They're
And for
clown.
instance,
They pick the clown. It's not like
yeah,
they pick on Matthew Berry.
no,
Because
no.
I tell you, Matthew Berry has said things.
Oh
You and
yeah.
I have said things that are
But
like, no, that really didn't work out, did it?
well, I picked the Jets to beat Buffalo a few weeks ago. Like,
What?
yeah. Like, remember when I
Dennis?
broke down the betting data
Yeah.
and I said something is here. Now, granted, Fields went out very early in that game. And if he plays healthy and he plays good, maybe it's a completely different outcome. But it was still a bad prediction. Okay. It didn't win, it did not work out. It was a bad prediction. But I also didn't like, I didn't make a guarantee that it was a lock. I just said, here's some curious data. This is why I'm going this direction. And it was also at a time of the season where we don't know what we don't know as far as team efficiency, as far as defenses. We're in a we were in that lag period early in the season where there was more unknown. But what I am intrigued about this data is if we can figure out a pattern to that 6 or 7%, now we really have something. And my belief is that it ties back to the opportunity index concept that, this player A was not getting it done. Player B finally earned the touches, and sometimes it is injury. Like, with Pittsburgh, Jaylen Warren is listed questionable. Let's say Jaylen Warren goes out early in this game. Is is the rookie finally going to get out of the doghouse for his dumb decision he made on a kick return, or will somebody else be shoved into that role and the rookie is again at the end of the bench waiting as his punishment? That is that is so random. We don't even know what we don't know on that one. But I wouldn't fire him up as a starter until I actually see what the hell is going on. Now, Jalen Warren did make the flight. That's their a wonderful Ireland game. So,
Yeah.
we know that he's there. So he's probably going to play. They wouldn't have shipped him all the way across to Europe if he wasn't likely to play. But my key here is there a pattern that we can predict in advance? And that's where, you know, like I said, coming back to the Puka Nakua thing, so many people used his data to try to skew their models when it was just this random act of a decent player, a really good player who was just in the perfect opportunity and then seized that opportunity. And I don't think it was measurable with athletic skills as much as it was what was between his ears. I just think he's a very
The
smart
12 to 15,
football player.
while you were pontificating, it's
Yeah,
4% above 20.
boy.
So I'm wondering if I keep, I mean, eventually we're going to get to 20, and, it's not going to be unusual if you're in the 20s first 3 weeks. It's probably not. And I've got some data on that I hadn't showed you yet, but in other words, I need to finish this up and I need to do wide receivers and tight ends
Yeah,
for us.
yeah. I
But
would love to see where
anyway,
the targets go on wide receivers. That would be very
yeah, the
interesting to
touches.
see if
Yeah,
there's a pattern with tight ends other than this guy's a tight end or a red zone target.
yeah.
That's with tight ends. I think the pattern more is how many opportunities that they have in the red zone. That's if they only had one opportunity week one and the guy only got targeted once, and then they get 6 trips inside the red zone week three, and the guy gets targeted 5, then it's more tied to the team performance than the player performance. But, that's just speculation until we look at the data.
40. I'm calculating the above 10, 41, 42. If you'll give me a second, we'll have that. 42. And this is 51. And this is, man, all these are above 10. This is 63, 64, 65, 66, 70, 71. And then that's minus the 20s. So hold up and I'll have this data. 71 minus 6 is 65. Okay. So, uh, probably unsurprising, uh, if you have 12 to 15 touches average week 1 to 3, almost half by weeks 14 to 16 continue above 10 touches. So there's again, we're getting to this level where you're kind of, the team's using you a lot and it's holding, but still only half. So there's and 4% above
Wow.
20.
Wow.
So what about the other half? So I need to break. So what I need to do, Dennis, and I got to go into the database and I got to characterize the, you know, group them like, 1 to 6, call it low, below average, above average. I need to put it into buckets and then look at the buckets that way to kind of compress the data a little bit. So we
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
but there's again, uh, our podcast's different because I just figured out that data. How many other podcasts will actually calculate data on the fly? I like it. I like that concept, putting this out there because nobody's doing that. They're going to tell you what's going on in week 4. I'm trying to figure out, you know, what did weeks 1 to 3 tell us? And aren't we on a podcast Tuesday night? We're going with Joe.
Oh
It might,
yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
I think we are.
And we're supposed to talk about bust and stuff. So I got to think about this data a little bit. I got to think what that means. So anyway, Dennis, this is the data. Uh, I really am amazed, and so I need to go. The next level. If I get a chance, I'll work on this. I better save this before it crashes. And let's see. So I've got that. Let's see. Do I have something else? Yeah, I do. Okay. So let me. Any other questions before we leave this? Now that I've added some more or anything,
Yeah,
have we
the
beat this to death?
the interesting thing is, again, we're looking at a 6, 7% and 4% make it to that above 20.
Superstar level.
Yeah. So what I'm curious about is, you know, what is the normal count per week of 20 touches? That, to me, in today's NFL, that seems to be a big outlier. Like, to me, I don't think there's many getting, you turn back the clock to the mid late 90s, and it was rare for a starting running back to be under 20, like
Uh-huh.
25 to 30 touches, or catch, it was kind of common. But now, man, it's like, if you get 20, that was a rare week. Like,
And I've got enough years that I can block it into half. So I can
yeah.
split from 2013. I'm sitting there looking at week 1 as some of the best players that have ever played. DeMarco Murray had 450 touches
Oh, geez.
in 2014.
Wow.
Okay. Le'Veon Bell
Yep.
had 406, 403 was CMC. So
Wow.
if people say CMC and then there's Henry and 20, so and look at Josh Jacob, Derrick Henry again. So
Yeah.
Henry,
Yeah.
I mean, look at who's doubled up. Nobody
Yeah.
has doubled up in the
No, and
top
there
10 except for Le'Veon Bell.
and there's your 370 curse,
Well,
showing up.
Dennis. My data does not support the so well. I looked at it differently. I looked at average touches,
Right.
and I only saw one failure out of about 13 or 14.
Interesting.
So
Yeah.
we talked about that in a previous pod, and I kind of hinted to Greg, and I think sometimes people get stuck into something, and part of science is there's one way to measure, but then if you get
Yeah.
another way to measure, it can, oh, hey, things are not right here.
Yeah. And
You've got to be open minded enough. And I understand, Greg, it's no offense to you, but it's not surprising that people get stuck. We all have to fight the demons in our head that try to, do we jump up the tree or stick a head in the weeds to see what that is? I mean, we've been fighting that. Our ancestors have been fighting. We've all been fighting the system 1 thinking versus system 2. And it's
yeah.
I'm
It,
just telling you that it's really hard to get our Vulcan mind to deal with this because we're lazy, our mind is lazy, and we want a fight or flight
well, when
because
I say
that keeps
when
us alive.
yes, when I say curse, though, I'm referring to a different conclusion than what Greg was.
Oh,
Because when I look at the data and I see over 310 for touches, everybody has declined in MVP index. That tells me a lot. Now, the key is that variable.
58 people have been 58 running backs have done 310 or better since
Yeah,
2013.
yeah,
58.
and it's not that they fell off the face of the earth. Okay,
This is not measuring their next year. This is just measuring
correct,
that year.
correct. And what I'm saying is year to year there is a decline, but the decline is not predictable. However, if I know there is a decline, why would it, and especially when that decline seems to occur with older running
Well,
backs?
again, we could look at, I mean, as you hinted in the
Yes,
previous, that we need to look at
yes.
level of experience and
We need to
age.
we need to
Yes.
look at level of experience, age. We need to look at other factors. And my study was so rudimentary in the off season to come up with that 310,
Yeah.
and it wasn't meant to be the definitive study of all time. It was 4 years worth of data, was all it was, but
Yeah.
it was the most recent 4 years, and for not a single guy to go up the following season in MVP. Now, if a guy had a 140 and he drops to a 135, that's a decline, but it's still anything over 120 for a running back is astronomical season for MVP.
Yeah.
Because of what it means. It means you were, above the median, you know, every week basically. You didn't have a bad week, or if you did, you had more great weeks than really bad weeks.
And I've got
And
some more data, a different way to look at this data, and I was going to show you that. So,
but this data on the volume is key, because even if a guy, you know, if he's declining on MVP index, but he's still getting the volume, if you're getting 15 touches a week as a running back, you're going to post a score that is not going to embarrass your team for the week. And, we saw it this week with another overreaction syndrome. Oh, Charbonnet is back. So therefore, we're going to see less than 14 and a half or even less than 12 and a half carries by Kenneth Walker. How did that work out? It didn't, because he had more carries than he had the week before when Charbonnet was out. Game scripts mean so much more than we think they do. And again, I'm not sure game scripts are predictable. But here's where your method is eliminating that. You're looking at a set of 3 weeks. So
yes.
even if 1 week is down,
No, I'm looking at an average.
you're looking at an average. And even if 1 week is really down, the other
Mm-hmm.
2 weeks will boost that number up.
Yeah.
And as long as there wasn't an injury to lower that number. So if you were 3 full games and your variance was 15, 10, and then 17 week 3, that's going to be a very representative 3-week sample for your study. And then you're using different way stations down the road to compare to. And again, it's not just a 1 week snapshot. That's when you eliminate a lot of the game script variants. You got to be horribly unlucky to have your three worst game scripted games being weeks 1 to 3, and then your best game script weeks to be 12 to 15. Like, you would have to have had the most unlucky random draw of tough defenses over the course of any 3 week window. You're likely not to have more than two tough defenses in a row. Like, very rare that there's 3 games where you've got a negative game script in a row for a running back. Just random chance just doesn't allow that because of the way we measure tough defenses in fantasy football, being the upper echelon so high, such a small piece of the upper echelon. So the way you're sorting the data makes sense to avoid falling into traps, is what I'm getting at. I like the methodology behind this study, and I think it's going to tell us a lot.
Well, so while we had thought about that, I also measured the difference and I got a difference metric. And so I started at the top and looked at difference. So the top 20% of running backs in this data series above basically 18 touches above and above. So we're talking pretty good folks here.
That's an elite group.
Yeah. Well, for weeks 1 to 3, there was at the end of the season, 20% of those were complete failures. That means they were zero. Whether that
Wow.
was injury, probably injury.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I called it complete failure. 12% actually improved by average of 3 touches, weeks 14 to 16. So
Wow.
that's one way to break it. And then I did greater than or equal to 0 touches versus 18 or above. So how many stayed the same or improved a little bit? 27. How many went down by 5, 0 to 5? 29. How many went down greater than 5 but not 10? 20. How many went down 10 or worse? And that includes the failures. 24%. So it looks like, if you look at the difference, it's only 6. That means most likely, if you went down more than 10, you probably were a complete failure. So that's kind of interesting. So I charted that, Dennis, in this way. So this is the elites above 18 the first 3 weeks. This is their distribution at weeks 14 to 16. So pretty close to the same and pretty close. It's about, if you add that together, what is that? That's 56%, so 60%. So 60% stayed the same. So if we look at who that is this year, 60% of them, 6 out of 10, are going to be the same. So 80% will only fall by 10, but 20% will be complete failures. So if we have, say, I don't know, say 10 running backs this year in the top first 3 weeks, 2 of them are going to be complete failures by the end of the season on average. Doesn't mean there won't be 3, doesn't mean there won't be 1 or 0, but just an average. So what if you're betting Vegas, the bet would be, kind of the over under would be 2. That's how Vegas would try to get your money. How many would be complete failures? So they may even put it to 3 to get it to their side a little bit. So then I looked 14 to basically 17.99. So the next level, and 42% of these running backs stayed the same or improved. 20% only dropped by 5. And failures were only 10, but some dropped the less than 10, 23%. So you still got this same, I would consider this a failure right here at
Yeah.
20%, 25. So the distribution looks like this. So it's a different distribution in these guys versus these guys. And I need to put the scale to be the same, uh, you know, 45. And it won't, I don't know if it won't let me change here. Nope, it's stuck. I don't know why sometimes it does that. Anyway, that's the data for this. So
So
20%
one thing,
improved. Yeah. So
yeah,
it's a different way to look at the data, Dennis, from the top down.
different way to look at it. And I would say you can also make the assumption here. You can kind of make the random thing. So is there a group +3? Is there a group for higher groups? Like, could you have increased by 5 to 8 or
Okay.
more and not fallen in? Or is +3 is
Here
catching everybody that
here's
increased by 3 or more, right?
we're talking 2013 to 24. We're
Okay.
only talking 18
So
had improved
18,
by 3 or better.
so
There it
18
is.
players,
These are the people.
but then only 6 with a 6 or more, and then only
Yeah,
one
yeah,
with 10 or more. God,
yeah. So it
that's
just
like,
doesn't happen.
it doesn't happen. That is crazy.
Yeah. So yeah.
That's not many players. But
And really, look, I mean, to stay the same, Dennis, like I said, at 0, we're only
so this,
talking 41
yeah.
have stayed the same.
So this has inspired me to do another study or a follow-up study on this. What I want to look at is if there is a team tendency.
I don't
In
know.
other words, are certain teams, certain coaches more likely to ride a guy with higher volume than others? And one of the ways that that can be discovered is what happens when that lead running back goes out. Does the distribution change? Like
Yeah, I
when a
don't know.
Derrick Henry goes to the bench,
Yeah.
is it the next guy up that still is getting the bulk of the carries, or do they get split?
Yeah, I
That's
don't
what I
know.
don't know. And I'm interested to see if that is there. And the reason I'm asking that hypothetical is when I look at these numbers and I see the percentages, like we're talking, we're talking like 40% or 20% that drop off considerably. And that's telling me in a lot of ways. I mean, even this failure rate, you know, 19% blowout versus 10, like
So
that,
the higher ones failed.
which makes perfect sense to what they're always saying. Oh, we got to keep our guys fresh for the
Well, I
playoffs.
mean, but still, we're only talking 20%,
20%.
25%,
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
fourth. So you're only losing a fourth. So you need to consider in the top 3 in 2025 what it's, who we're talking here, Dennis, and who exactly are we talking about this year,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
and the number of touches, and but anyway, I think I may have that somewhere. I
And
think I
and
need to look at that.
when I look at these percentages
Yeah.
and dropping 5 to 10 or more is 44% and 38%.
Yeah.
That's
So it's
just,
about the same.
it's making me, it's just saying, if I've got a 4 in 10 chance of something happening
Yes, you could look at
from
it like,
from a strategy standpoint,
how do we deal with that?
I want to have the backup to that guy.
I mean, I think there's nothing dramatic about, like you said, the big picture. It's just, finding the right ones where the complete failure is going to happen. And yeah, wouldn't it be nice to look at the age distribution?
Yeah, and I want to see what happens from one season to the next.
Yeah, and I didn't
You
look
know,
at that. I did
is
not look. I mean, I've
is
looked at touches per game,
yeah, is being over
and it is
17.
predictive.
Yeah, is over being over 17 touches, is that predictive for next season?
The poster that you've got, I did touches per game for running
Yeah.
back, and it was
And
predictive.
that was seemed to be very strongly predictive, which tells me that that's the pool of fish we should be fishing for.
And I think everybody is fishing. It's just, how do you deal with the failure rate? I think is the debate. Is it the zero RB
But if
concept,
yeah,
or
but well, if we're fishing in that pond, okay, and there's a relatively high failure rate.
what is 20% or 25% high? For running, if I had tight ends and wide receivers, we would
Yes.
know.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just kind of a player failure rate. I don't know the answer,
and,
Dennis.
and it could be, and it it also could be that we can discover the non-injury drop-offs using our metrics.
Maybe.
So in other words, maybe we look at and see of that, of the 44% that dropped, or the 24% that
Right.
dropped off more than 10,
Right.
are 80% of those guys under a certain MVP score? Like,
Yeah.
I
I
don't
don't know that.
know.
I mean,
And
imagine having the last year's
oh,
MVP
yeah,
on top of this data,
yes. And
or
also
age on top of this.
breaking out an early ADP for this season, you
That
know,
kind of thing.
yeah, because I look at a guy, and again, how much of this is because Burrow went out
Yeah.
and we're now dealing with backup quarterbacks. Chase Brown had 13 points week one.
Yep.
He's had 8 and 6 without Burrow.
Yeah.
You,
Yeah.
is that why? I just, but I look at his MVP score now, and it's a 0 without Burrow,
Right.
and it was a 100 with Burrow. It's only
Yeah.
3 data points,
Right.
but now he's down to a 33 for the year. That's horrible for where he was drafted.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, I'm going to have a week 4 ends the first quarter of fantasy football, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to have that review article this week of, it's going to be a good, bad, and the maybe ugly type of routine where I'm going to look at guys that, you know, basically, I wish I had more of this guy. I wish I had less of this
I
guy,
think
or
I'm going to save
I'm
what
pretty
I
happy.
just had there. That's another study.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. There's the benefit, the great thing about a study like this is not only that you learn things, but it also spawns a lot of other ideas for where we can improve. Because, and again, that is not usual of most people. You know, they would have a level of success that we've had with our com data, the Bush number, and
yeah,
MVP, and they'd say, "Oh, I'm never refining this. This is great. It worked great. I'm keeping it." We are always attacking the game on different levels. We
Yeah.
know volume is important, and we know that running back touches the year before are very predictive of the next season.
Mhm.
And look at the guys like James Conner. Now, granted, going down with an injury, so but that's that's a random event. I don't think it was forecastable based on the data that we had. But those are the guys, the Alvin Kamara's, the James Connors, where based on volume, you'd have these guys at a second or third round draft pick, and they fell to fifth through eighth rounds. I mean, there's guys that were so incredibly cheap that shouldn't have been cheap. That's what
Right.
our analysis based on MVP, based on volume, based on looking at the team
Mhm.
said these guys shouldn't be that cheap. And those are the guys that have worked out pretty good as usual. Um, but it's such a weird, for every study that you do, it does spawn like three or four more ways of having to look at the data because you need to see if that group, that sortable group that you want, those guys that increased, is there a pattern to that? Is there something we can figure out of why they increased? Just as we look at that data and it shows that this coach speak about, oh, I'm going to go easy on my guys,
Oh,
keep them
here it
fresh
is.
for the playoff.
Yeah, here it is. Okay. I found what I was looking for. So let me drop back in. So for 2025, here are the average touches for weeks 1 to 3. So I
Wow.
divided above 17. So this group. So again, we have uh let's see, how many is this? 20% of these should fail. So 14, so 20%, three, three
Yeah.
should fail.
Yeah.
Three
Yep.
should fail. Chase Brown could be one. By the way,
Chase.
he's
Yeah.
there. Dennis, his touches have declined 23, 18, and 14. Look at
Yeah.
Javonte Williams also declined, but nobody else. And again, I
Look at
haven't looked
Kamara go
at
up.
the pattern in the first three
Yeah.
weeks. Is that evidence we're worried about a decline? I'm telling you, on
Now
average,
that
three of these fail.
now that DAPs have been updated
Mm-hmm.
to reflect this season,
Mm-hmm.
it would be interesting to
Yeah,
overlay
to
the
look
defensive
that
strength and to see
right.
if there's any
Any
is de,
correlation here?
is defensive strength predictive of touches.
Yeah,
Like that's
yeah,
another thing,
yeah.
you know.
I need interns, but I just wanted you to see who we're talking about. And then that next group are these in blue. So we're talking 26 total, should be 2 failures. So roughly this year, if you say let's stretch it to 32, 6 should fail this year on average. So we already know Connor was in the bottom here. So we've already lost one.
Yep. And he was at 13, so
Yeah.
he wasn't even seeing a heavy volume. And we saw failure. Look at Scatterboat increasing 4 to 13 to 16. And I would imagine he'll increase again this week. Wow. Look at Gibbs. Holy schmolies. 19, 15, 27. That's quite a variance from week to week. And his fantasy points haven't had as much variance as that. And then look at Taylor. Taylor's been pretty consistent. When you've been plus or minus 3 from your average, that's pretty incredible. That's great data, Professor.
I think it is good data. But anyway, I just wanted to, so I had asked the same question you did, just kind of, so how can we predict the three failures in the top group? And I'm thinking, I mean, if we just used it, 15, 14, is that some of our failures? Of course, it's probably more injury because the data really suggests complete failures
Yeah.
versus a super decline.
Yeah.
It's rare that a team has these guys and somehow they're still hanging around. They're not injured. And they're somehow, I mean, there must have been something like maybe they were injured early in the season and then somebody took over and they came
Yes.
back. But
Yeah.
it's rare. Basically, the complete failure is more realistic than you were hot, you got cold, and then came back again. That I think there's some you know uh, it's not as much of that as you think. I think,
No,
and I
no.
don't know how again, maybe there's ways to predict injuries. I don't know. But anyway, I just wanted to show you that we can predict six failures. So, uh, who's the failures here, Dennis? Who's the failures uh for this season?
Yeah,
Uh
and some of these guys
like I said,
are,
Connor's out, so
yeah.
we're on
Connor's
average we
one,
got five more to go.
5 more to go.
And I don't know
And
who the injury. I guess the older ones, people would argue the Henrys is old, the Saquon. Greg would argue Saquon's going to be one of these. It's going to drop. I guess CMC, his, his injury history. I mean, you can think, or the Kamara's getting long in the tooth. I mean, but that's
yeah,
what you're just guessing.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
if
and
I'm a
that's,
dynasty player and I know, am I sitting on the hot potato or not? Because, how do you unload? I mean, CMC, you could probably get a lot for him right now.
oh yeah, yeah.
But somebody like Kamara, maybe not so much. That kind of thing.
But maybe Kamara is the guy to target for
Yeah,
trades.
I don't know. I mean,
He'd be the,
I'm just looking at,
yeah,
because I know we wanted to ask questions about uh next, the end of the season. One might argue, Dennis, and I hadn't looked, is the first 3 weeks predictive of next year?
ooh,
You
yeah,
see, that
yeah.
sets it up. In other words, did we get a sense, even if there's a failure, did they flash, or maybe 3 week
They
blocks? Has
they were the
anybody
yeah,
flashed at 17 or better
they
and
were
then
the
got
show.
injured?
Yeah, early season, I would think it would be because that's predictive of like as long as the guy's
Team
on,
confidence,
yeah, as long as the guy's on contract for the next year,
yeah,
like
that
that
kind
might
of
tie
thing.
in as well. Like
Yeah,
if
I,
there's a failure, like James Conner, there's a failure, and now he is
he's
without a
gone.
contract next year as well.
Ooh,
Is that more indicative
yeah,
of a
predictive
guy
for next year. I mean,
or
these are
yeah?
questions we'll be talking about off season. But again, we have wound down, Dennis, and put ourselves into places that nobody else has gone.
And at this failure rate percentage,
Well, it's held from
I'm
2013 to 24. I mean,
at
I'll have 2025's data for us to consider off season. So we'll have another year in the database.
at that percentage in a league like FPPC, where you get 10 bench spots. This data is screaming about handcuffing your own RBs.
It does to me. I mean, you 25% fail.
If you got 25% failure rate, Okay. Think this through.
Okay.
If I look at if I invest in, let's say, 6 backfields, I have 6 running backs on my roster, and I take 6 from 6 completely different teams. I got 4 starters and I got 2 of somebody else's backups.
Yeah.
And I have 25% failure rate.
Yeah.
I just I look at this as I still need 2 injuries to happen to activate my subs if they're on different teams. So it's just a matter of percentages, because if I've got, in comparison, if I do 4, again, I get 4 starters because I've been pretty good at getting 3 or 4 starters out of the block in my drafts. The way we draft, we're pretty smart, at figuring out who the starters are going to be. Now, if I've got 2 of those 4 backed up, that just increases my odds of knowing I'm going to have 2 guys to choose from, as long as I can identify that second running back correctly. And sometimes it means maybe I'm going deeper. I don't know, but this is interesting, because this kind of, it fits in. Again, this is the difference between a 6 or a 10 player bench. 10 player bench, I think the data suggests that it's smart to handcuff your own guys if you can get them at an affordable rate. And especially, the way I'm looking at this data, I'm interested in that next level of study, because is the next guy up a young, unproven player? Is he a rookie or second year guy? Look at the ones we had last year. Chase Brown, second year guy. We had Bucky, a rookie, taken over. And then the year before, we had Kyron Williams, a second year guy. If we can identify that next man up has a higher percentage of being a rookie or a second year man, then I think we really have an understanding of how to handcuff, versus just taking the guy who was the handcuff last year. That works with Atlanta because they didn't draft anybody. But if they drafted a running back next year in the first 4 rounds of the draft, I would be reluctant to think that Algier is going to hang on to the backup role. If something were to happen to Bijan, I don't think Algier is then the anointed one. That's kind of what I'm looking at, is taking this to the next level of, can we figure out who that replacement is? What is the pattern to the replacements? When the complete failures happened, what happened next? And that's going to be very easy. Once you identify the failures in any given year, it's easy to do a case study of why that person lost their job.
Right.
Was it injury? Was it poor performance? Did our metrics show that it was poor performance?
Yeah.
Was it fumbles? What did that player do to lose the trust? Because if you're getting 15 plus touches a week, you have that coach's trust, because a team's only getting 60 plays. And half of those are going to be passes. If you're getting 60 plays, you got 30 running plays, and 15 of those are going to the running backs. That's huge. Let's say out of those 30 passes, 5 targets go to running backs. So that was 35 opportunities to distribute among three guys. One of them's getting 15. That's a huge chunk of that number. If somebody's getting 20, that's an even larger chunk. I mean, that's kind of the way I look at it. And I take running attempts by quarterbacks out of that mix. That's a completely different thing. But I'm very curious to see what the volume breakdown is from week to week for a team. And can we predict that using defensive metrics?
Yeah.
And as we've seen, a tough defense for certain players or certain positions can actually boost the other position. You know, if you shut down the run, you got to throw the ball 45 to 50 times. That's going to increase the scoring for the quarterback most of the time, unless they're, because if they're getting 45 passes, they're going to score a shitload of fantasy football points. They're just going to have to. Even in a blowout, they're going to get junkyard time.
Junkyard,
that is going to get them. You know, look at what happened with Kyler Murray on Monday Night Football.
Yep.
Midway, almost the end of the third quarter, he had 6 points in fantasy football. He ended up with 24.
Yeah.
Like 18 points when they were just forced.
Is that
to
unusual?
Throw.
You know,
no.
When you say that,
no,
it makes me want to look at that kind of variation, you know,
yes.
Especially if I'm in-game betting. And again,
oh, yeah.
I know, I'm curious, I bet Vegas probably has to know. You can't offer odds if you don't
yes.
If you don't understand how rare is it to go from 6 to 24, you know, say first half versus second half. In other words, if you go offer some odds at halftime, and I'm sure you can find some place that gives you odds.
Yep.
You know, uh, if I had a casino and I was running the metrics, I'd want to know for to keep my job.
There's no mysteries when it comes to odds.
I don't think so.
No,
the mysteries is they're not going to tell us.
We don't understand them, but it doesn't mean the data doesn't exist.
Yeah, and that's why I need interns so I can have a secret chest full of riches, and I consider the data and the secret metric there's your riches, the sacred data. And I'm telling you, in horse racing, the few that have been successful have that. They have things that we don't have. And if everybody's staring at the same thing, then you're competing on your analytical and psychological skills, right? I mean, in poker, we all know the odds. The deck is not changing. I mean, that's why poker's the ultimate. You got to understand risk and dice the same way. It's risk means that you know what's the odds you'll roll snake eyes. I mean, it doesn't change.
Right.
You know, with fantasy football, it's uncertainty. Imagine you're rolling the dice and 7 comes up, a 7 on the dice. It's like, where'd that come from? That's called uncertainty. You could have never predicted that somehow the dice had changed into something else. And that's why it's fantasy football. And horse racing, there's odds, but each race, you don't know what horse gets out first. What's the jockey thinking? I mean, you predict the shape of the race and the pacing, but if the strap breaks, I mean, there's so much uncertainty. I mean, we say favorites win on average, but there's still a lot of uncertainty in horse racing versus dice. It's fixed. We know in fantasy football, it's not fixed. Nothing is fixed.
No,
but Vegas has enough metrics that they juice in their advantages to try to take up the uncertainty. In other words, they try to load it so they're not totally broke by the uncertainty. You
No, and
know,
their goal is
to balance the
also
books, right?
to balance the books, but
So they take the rake, right?
with prop bets here it's a little bit different because I would guarantee there are opportunities that Vegas says, okay, this is what will move the line.
Yeah,
Okay. We
yeah.
know, like, again, for Ken Walker or anybody, the volume bets. Okay.
Yeah,
We set the line originally at 14 and a half.
yeah.
The betting was heavily skewed for the under. So we
Right.
dropped the line to 12 and a half. But here's the thing. Our data told us to set that line at 14 and a half
Yeah,
because we expect 15 to 18 touches, but we know the psychology of the bettors
hmm.
is going to think,
So you
oh,
get more dumb money.
we want to get the dumb money going
Yeah,
in one direction
yeah,
and we want to play the odds on the other side. So
yeah.
that way we're not just taking the
I mean,
rake. We're
that's
winning 75, 80% of the
yeah.
bets,
When
but we were,
grocery
yeah,
stores double the coupons, they want
yes,
people come in there and buy a case of Windex instead of one. They love that.
right. Oh, yeah,
They
yeah.
love that because they're making money. Even if you buy a case, they're still making money.
Well, that's why the 10 for 10 stuff
Yeah. Well,
always
that's
pays off,
tricks
you
because
know?
you walk over there and, 2 for 50. It's like, boy, that sounds good
Yeah,
versus 49.99. I mean, it's all psychological tricks and the
yes.
colors and where they place.
Oh, yeah. And
And
which are their loss leaders
Dennis, and I
this
know
week? Yeah.
your wife works at these things. They have people that come in and they have laser and they check where their eyes hit up and down the
Yep.
aisles.
Yep.
And have you ever noticed that some aisles they'll put crap in the middle and they put all the
Yes.
candy at the checkout so they want the
Yep.
little kids to grab a
Yep.
fistful of baby Ruths
Yep. Yep.
so that mom will, okay, I'll buy you one because the kid needs to be sugar, already sugar us with the honey bun you fed them in the car, and you bring them in, they're getting a Hershey bar and they're going to be bouncing off the wall. Then you have to beat them. You can't beat them in public. You can't take the switch and beat them. And that's why they like all that sugary crap at the end to try to load it up. And
Yeah. The
there's a lot of
interest.
tricks, and I don't
Yeah.
like. It makes me angry at all these tricks they do.
There's a lot of tricks and there's a lot of data
Oh, I know that.
in pricing and stuff like that. One of the guys that I worked with at United got a job working for Walgreens
Yeah,
Corporation, the pharmacy company, doing pricing studies
oh, I'm
because
sure
meteorologists, data is data,
data is
like,
data.
and I mean, that's why I can look at fantasy football in a different way. Same with you, is our scientific background dealing with numbers
Yeah,
has taught us different things to look for
yeah,
than the typical person in fantasy football, whether
sure.
they're a player or an analyst. And that's what I say when when I when I use the curse of 370, I'm doing it in a different way than what Greg Kellogg would be doing because I am understanding that there will be a drop, but what is the most likely drop? My data sort of suggested it was about 20%. So now if I looked, and again, that was only a 4-year study. It's the most recent 4 years, so I feel really good about that because the game is always evolving.
Yeah,
But that changes my way of looking at it. If it's a player that is dropping from a 100 to an 80, that's different than a player who's dropping from a 141 to a 112, or 113. That's like a 113. I'm happy with that. But what we're discovering is how wrong the consensus is every year. Look at the success and failure rates of the consensus first player taken in fantasy football drafts. It's embarrassing how bad the consensus has been. And granted, a lot of that is injury related, but Jamar Chase has had 1 4-point week, 1 8, and 136. I mean, that's the kind of extremes you don't want from your first pick.
No.
I'd feel better, and I did this in a few drafts. I took Gibbs as the number one player.
Yep.
15, 19, 26. I like those numbers better.
Yeah.
Also took Bijan Robinson
Yep.
a few times, 24, 19, 16. I like that a hell of a lot better than the top wide receiver.
But the year before, we were all grabbing CMC at number one.
Before we were grabbing CMC.
We got a big surprise.
We got smacked around by injury.
Yep.
And so we're, as my study showed, there's no difference of the super elite running backs and wide receivers using my MVP from year to year. Yet the number of guys we draft at running back and wide receivers changed. That means it's changing because of psychology. It's not changing because of the data.
Yeah.
And so we can stay on the data. We beat that psychological switch.
That's a hard thing to do.
And if we stay on the data, we stay away from these sort of niche strategies like zero RB. And we're just drafting based on value. And we don't care what position it is.
Well, here's the thing with the strategy. If there was a clear strategy that won, everybody would do it. The fact that there's so many differences and people argue that means there is no, we would have already found it by now. Just like at the horse racing, if it was easy to do, everybody would be doing the same thing.
Right.
And I'm telling you, the hero, the zero RB, the fact that we're still debating years later tells me people's experience, it's not clear.
No.
And so I think it's personal, and that's why I argue the diary. That's why I argue how you deal with data determines what you should do. And that's why you and I get in kind of and I hate to say the word bubble because it sounds like we're resistant to new ideas. We're not.
No.
But that's where we find ours. We have been pushed to this because that's where the data analysis has put us. If it changes, right? If they added a giant football, right? They double the size of the football, that would change things, right? Or if they added an extra player, or if they gave them hockey sticks to hit each other with, it would change strategy, right? Wouldn't that be something? You give them a stick to beat each other with.
And we're actually seeing a change of strategy play out this season that coaches don't know how to deal with in real football yet. It's this
the kickoff
rule.
Yeah, they still hadn't figured it out.
No, they haven't figured it out because there's a danger to any way that they try to do it because the
one sample, in other words, if Coach A does 2 or 3 of the same thing 3 weeks and they get X result, that's going to bias them. Whereas another coach, maybe it worked out differently. And so on the 4th week, they're completely different because of how it just randomly worked out. So number of data, the N number, and we, 3 data points, and that's a trend. People say that. Can you imagine in the stock market, 3 days of data? This is what we should pay attention to now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's mortgage our house on day 4. No. Okay, these people look all sorts of, when you go and look at the data, the Dow Jones and the
Yeah.
Nasdaq, you have this calendar: 1 month, 1 week, 1 day, 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 5, 10. I mean, they have all sorts of scales to look at. If it was, if you didn't need to understand a big cycle, why they got that there? It costs money to pay somebody to put that software in. The
Yes.
fact that it's there means it must have relevance, at least to the consumers.
Yes. And
So,
and the interesting thing is in grain marketing, for instance. So I saw a great presentation, and it reminded me so much of how you do fab in fantasy football. And you always
me personally or
you
everybody does it?
personally, no, you
Me?
personally.
Oh, how do I
Yes.
do it?
Yes, because
Because I don't know. I
well,
forgot.
it's because of how you've scolded me when I give my
I didn't know I
bids,
scolded you.
when I give my bid amounts,
Yeah.
they're always by the even or the fives. Okay.
No, no, no,
But
no, no.
but
No, Dennis. You are
when
scolded again. We do
but
not do it that way.
but when I do that for the article, it's showing a percentage
Yes.
likelihood.
Yeah.
It's not saying that should be your bid.
No.
It's,
No.
if I say 45,
Yeah.
I'm going 47,
And
49, whatever.
realize, folks, that uh last couple weeks I've bid a certain amount on my defenses, and I started thinking, people are probably watching me. So
Yes.
now I
Change it
changed
up.
it up again.
Change it up. Yeah.
Like
And
this week, I really wanted Detroit.
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So instead of bidding what I've been bidding, I'm not saying what that number is. It's not a lot, Dennis.
Yeah.
I changed it.
I was
And
going,
lo and
I was
behold,
going,
I felt like I got a lot of what I wanted this week versus the week 3. I felt like people
yeah.
were watching me. And
Yeah.
again, I'm paranoid, but so
No,
you got to change it, folks.
I actually think there's something to that. And if I have like FPPC, we're always streaming defenses.
Oh yes.
Okay. I never lean on the same defense, for a long period of time.
Right.
But when I put in a bid,
Yeah.
if I've got 4 defenses
Yeah.
and I'm happy with any of those 4, I put in a buck on every one of them. I don't,
Yes.
I don't
But I don't
differentiate.
usually I don't have that kind of I used to have a
No,
biased opinion.
no. But if I've got like this week it was Detroit. I had a couple of leagues, and because by 3 weeks in, you now see some tendencies. So if I lost my number one defense to a $3 bid,
Yeah.
now I might go $4
Yeah.
this week and see how that works. And then I might go 7 on one that I really, really like, and
Yeah.
then 3 on my secondary and 1 on the next 3, that kind of thing. I will change that up every single week. But in grain marketing, how that applied is people will put an order in
Yes,
ahead
they
of
will.
time.
Right.
Yeah, okay, if it and what this guy said
Fill or kill order.
was never ever put in an order for $5
No.
for corn. You want to put in your bid starting at like 493,
Yeah.
497, because
503
because everybody is
is
saying
putting
I'm not
$5.
selling until I get the $5.
Yeah.
And he showed us a chart where it got up to 497.
Yeah.
People didn't buy, and
But at
then the
5
next
they did.
stop, at 5 they would have had all their orders in it at 5. It made it to 497.
Yep.
And then it went all the way down to 417.
Yep.
So it never made $5. He said, I had my orders in at $4.97.
Yep.
It cost me $3 a bushel.
Yep.
Was versus what if I put in a $5 bid. We never made 5. So I ended up actually making 80 cents a bushel.
Yeah.
It versus what I would have. He said, people are always, oh, I lost that. I lost 3 cents versus the $5 if it went up to 5.
Right.
He says, that's the wrong logic. The wrong logic is when you're wrong. When you don't make it to that magic number, what do you end up doing? And the other thing that they track all the time is there's a seasonal cycle
Yes.
in the grain markets. Okay, so the corn, for instance, max out in June, usually. This year it didn't do that. Oh, were people screwed. And 2 of the analysts that I heard talk in the off season said, the way this market is shaping up, I don't believe that we'll have a June increase like we usually do.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a lot of weather related, but it was also numbers from South America related. And they basically maxed out in March. So if you went with the usual pattern, you got screwed.
Yeah.
But there were some analysts that were smart enough to figure that out ahead of time this year based on what was going on.
Yep.
But, it's just weird how some of that stuff, and in fantasy football, the same thing. Like, we can see the same patterns that emerge. That's how we end up with some of these safe
nobody
guys.
has, and it's something I probably should work on, but I don't. If I had interns, I would have them tracking the different weeks and looking at average fab bids for positions and just does it go up? In other words, if somebody's sitting on a lot of money in week 14, do they just get crazy with it at that point? Or, in other words, can you predict things that are just irrational versus, say, week 8? Versus week 1, are there people going irrational? That kind of thing. In other words, it would be nice, and that's reference class forecasting, Dennis. We're coming back to understanding the averages, understanding what should go on versus what is going on versus what do you need it to go on versus how do you approach it. So there's different metrics, but like I said, I'm at my age, I'm now ready to go back to school and get my PhD. I would be so more efficient than I was as a graduate student. I'd kick butt and take names now, but it's taken me all this time to really the data analysis to catch up. I mean, it just I love, and boy, if I could go back in time and play fantasy football when I first started,
Oh,
oh my
Lord, yeah.
goodness, would I be raking the chips in? Because
Yeah.
imagine going back and people, just behaving very irrationally. I think people are more. I've got evidence this year, and again, that's just my visual. I don't really have evidence, but it seems that everybody's on the running back handcuffs this year more than I remember last year. And that's probably just I'm being tricked because I'm greedy and I want all the handcuffs to be on my bench, right, Dennis? So I'm greedy. And
Yeah, they're
so as we
yes.
drafted together and separate, I would just notice that, man, these people are going earlier than they should, or that makes me angry.
Well, there were guys the last couple of years, like go back a few years, it was Kyron Williams,
Yep.
where we drafted a lot of him,
Yes.
but in other leagues, he was like the fab guy week 1. Puka, same thing that year.
Right.
We had a lot of these players on our roster already. And you had to put in a real healthy bid to get those surprise guys. This year, more than it, because Chase Brown and Bucky were available week one waivers last year. And this year, there haven't been any surprises. Like people were, you know, before Scatterbo got the job, you had to have him rostered. Like there were no surprises. And Bill in Washington was another classic case. He went from being our 15th round draft pick to being a seventh round pick. And, you know, 2 years ago, that same player would have been available waivers week one. It's amazing. There have been fewer bargains to be found at running back, but that just means that the attention for the good fab bids has actually switched to wide receivers. There's been better buying opportunities at wide receiver this year than there have been at running back, and some of them haven't paid off since their big fab bill or bid. Boutte hasn't really done much since he was the hot commodity. Moore from Tennessee has thankfully continued to contribute and seems, but that was a guy we liked in the preseason as well. That was our latest draft pick at wide receiver. But yeah, it's amazing. I think people do learn over time and change their behaviors, and it seems to be the handcuffs are harder to get on waivers this year.
I think so. We probably should quit this nonsense and get on to.
All right. Well, let's.
Here, Dennis, let me stop recording because I need to take a potty break.
No worries. I think